doing an interesting review. This is not going to be a bushcrafting style review. This is actually going to be a survival review, or survival knife review, and it's going to be on the SOG Seal Pup Elite. Now this is an older version from about 2009, so it's not quite, it doesn't quite look exactly like the new ones, but it is for the most part like the new ones, and really the only difference is some of the logos have changed, and maybe slightly styles have changed, but not significantly. So that's why I'm doing a review on the SOG Seal Pup Elite. Now, I will say a couple things. When I first got this knife, which was way back in 2009, like I said, I loved serrations, and I thought they were incredibly awesome. I now no longer think that way. I am a plain edge person, and this knife is available in plain edge, and I would highly recommend that you get the plain edge. And for the sake of the review, I'm not going to be really talking much about the serrations, so it's almost like they're not going to be there. I am going to roll in some bushcrafting knives so that you guys can see the differences between what I like in a bushcrafting knife, or what is generally good in a bushcrafting knife, in comparison to a survival knife. As you guys can see, on the top and bottom are some of my favorite bushcrafting knives, and you can definitely see the difference between them. Primarily, and what I mean by the difference, I primarily mean in the grinds on these knives and in the tip styles of these knives. Not so much the serrations or the black coating, because you could get black coating on pretty much any knife. And the serrations, like I said, just pretend they're not there. So other than that, other than those two facts, this is a clip point, and this is a drop point and a spear point. Spear points and drop points I prefer far more for bushcrafting, because of when you're making things like bow drills, or when you have to make divots in wood with the tips of your knives. Drop points and spear points are far better at doing that than a clip point, as well as generally, this is an exception to this rule, but most clip points aren't as strong as drop points or spear points, just given to how the metal is. And generally with the clip point, they like to do this kind of thing, where they grind this swedge, and once again, taking steel off the edge will, or off the blade itself, will of course, in theory, make it weaker. That being said, this is an extremely robust knife. With this out of the way, I do want to talk about this knife and why I think it is such a good survival knife. I'm going to take these out of the way, because we're not really talking bushcraft versus survival, although that may be an upcoming video, I don't know. But why I like this knife for survival is kind of counterintuitive to most people, and that is that a lot of people, they love to run large knives, or small machetes essentially, that are very thick, very heavy, and really unnecessary and extremely bulky. If you tried to realistically put them into a survival situation, not only would you probably not realistically be carrying it in any kind of real survival situation, but also it would be an extremely cumbersome thing to carry with you. And the knife is probably one of the only tools you'd have in a realistic survival situation, so it would be with you at all times, and having something that weighs 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, on top of trying to carry back materials for your shelter, or trying to carry back of an already limited calorie basis, so you're not even going to have as much energy as, say, if you were bushcrafting. Generally you carry, some kind of tool to procure meat, so you're likely going to have far more energy, because it'll be far easier to procure meat. So you're already be working with limited energy as well. I just don't see these huge knives as very realistic survival options. Now, that being said, if you just want to go out in the woods with those knives, they could be fun to use. But if we're talking a real survival situation, I've seen people make Swiss Army knives work for them. So, there's no doubt that this edge length here would be a problem. And like I said, the weight is just a really, really huge factor. Edge is AUS-8, and it doesn't have the world's best edge retention, and that's probably one of its only faults for a survival knife, if we're talking plain edge here, of course. When planning this knife for survival, you'll probably want some kind of sharpening system. It doesn't have to be anything super amazing. Probably just something like a Spyderco double stuff, or one of their ceramic, just straight ceramic, I don't even know what to really call them, but a rectangle, a ceramic kind of thing to keep your edges honed, and that's really could be a problem, but I found ceramic to be pretty light, and definitely you could feasibly carry it in either sheath attachment. I also want to say that this does come in quite a few different variations. Of course, this one is black tie-dye coated with the serrations, but it also comes in satin, so no black coating. It also comes in plain edge, and it also comes with two different sheath options, either the nylon sheath or the Kydex sheath. And I think either way you could carry some kind of sharpening system. The nylon sheath would be far easier because it does have a pouch, but either way. So other than that, I do have another dislike about this knife other than the edge retention. The edge retention is kind of more of a nitpick. I mean, if you're in a survival situation, it certainly wouldn't be bad. There have been other people that have had worse steels and done just fine. But one thing that I don't like is, as you can see, all these grooves. I'm not sure how well the camera's actually picking it up. But there are a bunch of grooves on the top of this, and if you ever look at any pictures of the SOG Seal Pup or the Seal Pup Elite, you'll notice the entire back of it is grooved, and SOG never said anything about it, or I never found any real good explanation of why they did this or why they continue to do it today. Supposedly the only solid thing that I got was for making notches in wood, but I don't really know why you would want a specific to essentially ruin the entire spine of your knife just so that you could make notches with an edge that can make notches as well. I mean, to me it doesn't really sound like a really smart idea, because essentially the problem with this is these are extremely aggressive notches up here, so if you ever hold it for long periods of time up here, it will definitely hurt your thumb or whatever finger you're using to hold it, which isn't a huge deal. But what I primarily hate is that you can't really use a ferro rod on this, and it definitely, if you're batoning with this knife, it destroys your batons. Essentially, this is like a serrated edge up here, and when you hit it with a baton, it just chews the baton up very fast, and so it essentially will destroy batons, and that's a criticism I have of it. I mean, it's not the end of the world. You can still certainly use the knife, just be forewarned that it does have this huge amount of, it's more like jimping all across this. I really don't like it. So that's probably really my only other dislike about it. I mean, of course, for bushcrafting, this handle is not the best, although you can still choke up and use it in this choked up position, so it still is actually pretty good for feather sticking. As well, it is this extremely narrow and very fine tip is very good for skinning game animals, and so it still has a lot of really good uses for your general survival needs and day-to-day needs in survival situations. I think this would definitely excel. Probably my favorite thing about this knife, and that is its durability. As you guys can see by the coating, this thing is pretty beaten up, and it has definitely taken a lot of abuse through when I've been using it, as well as a lot of batoning and a lot of just forced abuse trying to break the knife. I mean, I have shoved this into like a tree, and I used a baton to shove it into a tree about this far, and I hit it very hard with the baton. If I could get this tip to break off, and I did it a couple of times. I did about 3 times, and I mean, I was really hitting it with a good baton on this handle, and it didn't break, it didn't budge at all, and that is really quite awesome to see, because this isn't even a true full tang knife. The tang runs to about here, and its dimensions are about this throughout the knife, so it's not a true full tang. As you can see, it is fully enclosed in there. You can see the tang, if you ever look at one through this lanyard hole, you can see the tang, but it doesn't stick out the end, so it is fully encapsulated in this handle. So for most people, they'd think it'd be more prone to breaking, but it is actually really extremely robust, and that's why one of the reasons why I think it is such a great survival knife, because survival knives especially really need to be insanely robust, because you never know what you're going to have to do with it. You could have to stab a wild boar with it. You could have to do many different things that or potentially could break a lot of normal knives. And the problem with survival is your life is always on the line, so you really need something just ridiculously strong, something that you can intentionally abuse and it doesn't even care. Lastly, my last favorite point on it is its price point. Now, it wasn't always as cheap as it is now. When I got this knife, it was around 120 bucks, and that was a little much for it, especially considering it was AUS 8. But it is now anywhere from around $70 to $80, depending on what you get. Like I said, there's the coated version, serrated, kydex, nylon, sheaths, so any of those will fluctuate in price. Generally, the black coatings, the serrated edge, and the kydex will all add to price, of course, but it's still a really solid knife for that price point. I think it's well worth it. And if you're looking for a really strong, really robust survival knife, but a knife that isn't really heavy, really long like many of the others, I would definitely recommend you look at the SOG Seal Pup Elite. It does look a little bit more tactical, but it does have some serious survival applications and would be a really, in my opinion, really good and definitely a top contender for bushcraft. For survival. I keep saying bushcrafting, but for survival, it's a really awesome knife. And that's my review, and I'm out.